The Crystal Charter, The Daughter of the Red Seal. Written and read by Rebecca Sewell. The Cave, Part 1. A bewitching silence held her captive. In an unfocused haze, the stars shone overhead, each a fuzzy outline that danced elegant patterns across her vision, until a slow, tired blink turned everything dark again. There was no way she could relax with the taste of honey root and fire ginger tingling her mouth, so she surrendered and opened her eyes, grudging the action in the same way as someone who offers the last piece of food on a serving plate to be polite, and another dares take it. With her face turned toward the sky, she could make sense of the stars. The swan flew straight overhead, and to the left it almost looked like the dark wolf major. A frown creased her brow as she tried to figure out why those constellations were sharing the same patch of sky. The sensation of water in her hair and weighing down her dress dislodged her confusion, and she jerked upright. Splashing her hands in the shallow puddle she was laying in, she cupped it up to her face to try and wash some of her tiredness away. She straightened her spine to observe her surroundings. Posture was important for a lady. The pale stone platform was filled with a shallow pool of water, dripping over the sides with her movement. It looked like a giant oval bird bath, with whorls graved all along the edges, ending in a stone floor so dark it could swallow the night sky. There was nothing surrounding the platform, just a vastness that stretched on and on with the stars. The stars! Never had she seen so many in her life. Her foot landed on the floor, and she gave a start when she realized it was more water. A surface layer so thin she could see the smooth black rock reflecting the static lights above her. "This can't be happening!" The voice was almost musical, an echo that surrounded and embraced her. She looked around, but there was no one else that she could see. Her feet dangled above the mirror of the sky, and when she dipped her toe to disturb the surface, stars quivered along the ground. Foreign silk slippers graced her feet and let the warm water in. A gentle yawn floated free from her. It faded her vision out of, then into focus again. She didn't recognize the dress either. Palest cream with gold and silver embroidery along the arms. Close-fitting but comfortable, like one of the elegant statues in the gardens of the nobles. She felt she should search around to find a vase to hold aloft so she could stand still and let more water flow forth. "I have no idea where I am," she thought. This place was strange, magical, yet she could not summon any reason to panic. Everything here felt safe, but she could not comprehend the instinctive knowledge that told her it was. It was a thing that was, like the blood in her heart or the breeze from an ocean. "Wake up! Come on, this is a dream!" This time the voice had lost any sense of calm. Panic veiled behind the musical ring. "I am awake," she thought. After gazing up for a few slow, sleepy blinks, she discerned the stars above were not stars at all. They were balls of light floating within reach, the largest no bigger than a fist floating off to one side, and the smallest barely visible to her, despite being just above her head. Thousands and thousands of them stretched on, reflected on the dark, watery floor as far as her vision could reach. It felt like an immense cave filled with fireflies, each firefly frozen in invisible ice. Her instincts told her there would be no point in trying to move any of those glowing orbs. Their placement was fixed, natural. Nothing had the power to realign them, let alone a human. "Just open your eyes! Everything will be back in place!" "Who is that?" In a numb state, she stood upright and started to walk, to search for an exit or to find the person speaking to her in panicked tones. Strange, she pondered. That voice was so familiar. Who was it? Concentrating on her memories didn't help to reveal how she ended up in such a bizarre place. She quickly grew frustrated when her mind only went in circles. Home, safety, The king, not home. She hadn't been in a cave since she lived with her beloved parents. She had visited relatives that lived close to the caves of Ryber along the northern part of the West Wing mountain range, the Blasted Mountains. But that was a long time ago. The caves of Ryber were dark and wet, but the similarities stopped there. This wasn't Ryber. In fact, she wasn't entirely sure such a place could be considered a cave. This is probably a dream, like the voice said. Ouch! She hissed aloud. The sharp pinch she gave herself didn't alleviate her worry, but she knew that it was what you were supposed to do if you thought you were stuck in a dream. Walking a short distance did nothing to change her surroundings. The only movement in the cave were the ripples stretching wide across the watery floor from her feet. "Where am I?" she called, hoping the ghost voice would respond. The last thought she had was helping in the kitchen to prepare food for something important. It was quite fuzzy. She had been in the kitchen cooking. No, I forgot what I was doing. Pain blossomed as a headache as she forced herself to remember. Early memories were clean and easy to call forth. Then an image of King Jasik shone clearly, scowling and skeptical from his brass throne. Other images collapsed around her, a plethora of captious faces and hidden tears. She had left her home, that was clear, but her recent history was buried beneath a thick fog. "Wake up!" She nearly jumped out of her skin when the voice sounded again, not just closer, but louder. The volume wasn't nearly as distressing as the sobbing that followed the shout. It was the sound of pure heartbreak. Then it was gone again. Well, that was just plain terrifying, she thought, feeling completely unterrified. Was she walking towards the voice? Did she want to? No landmarks marred the horizon. Her fingers danced in the air in front of her, drawing lines to make constellations on the endless supply of stars. Some were real. Most of them she made up. "They want me to touch them," she breathed into the mild air. The closest glowing orb, low enough to touch, was 2 paces away. She crossed the short distance to stare into it. It was about the size of a buttercup, an immovable flower. The light emitting from it was a captivating glow. She had felt lured to them since waking up, but at the same time a dull fear ached at the back of her head, a warning wrapped in silk. That warning flared in her mind, and she stepped back from the buttercup star. To her right was another, its power seemingly diminished with its size. Muscles tightened. She took a deep breath, and her fingertip brushed an orb the size of an ant. He hates me. His eyes show me nothing but rage and disgust. I'm staring at the silver tunnel in his shaking hands. His dark, dirt-clad hair matches his exhausted eyes. He's breathing heavily, the dirt all over his face streaked by lightly falling rain. And blood, God's mercy! That is blood covering his clothing. We're standing in ankle-deep mud. I feel it around my feet, and I see behind his shoulder a field churned with dark, moist soil, smoke rising in the distance. I start to turn and look down and see my clothes are again unfamiliar. I'm wearing trousers and boots. I'd never be seen looking like this, like a man, a soldier, or a peasant on the run. It doesn't matter, I wouldn't. A stabbing pain in my shoulder and the sight of blood on my own appalling outfit jolts me, the pain making me believe that at least some of this blood is mine. I begin to lift my hands to see what grime they are covered in, when I realize that hidden in the carnage of the field I can see a lifeless, torn body. This is a nightmare. I can't even think of why I would have this gut-wrenching vision. "You deserve this, bitch." I glance up to the stranger in time to see the hate in his eyes grow into an all-consuming inferno. His hand twitches on the shining contraption he holds. Click. Then she was back, bathed in the pale light of the not stars, large, hot tears streaking down her face. She took a shuddering breath, then collapsed on the floor and sobbed, loudly. It took a surprisingly short time for her to compose herself against the shock of what she had witnessed, what she felt. That was death, she thought. Her skin crawled, and she shuddered again. Her mind flooded with questions. Whose death? Why did I see that? Where was that? There were answers to none of them. Despite the fear that surged fresh in her head, she could feel it being suppressed, swallowed into the cave around her. Panic, fear, sorrow, they couldn't exist here, not for long. Dismay pressed against her, faded and rose again as she took in each of the stars, of what each one might be. I'm trapped in a cavern of death. One step, another. Her back was turned to the stone basin, and her feet were falling faster and faster. Soon she was sprinting, and each step was creating the delicate music of splashing to the rhythm of her dread. She pushed herself forward until her breathing was short, her chest aching from lack of exercise. The first landmark that came into her line of sight stopped her. No, she whispered as she took shaky steps towards the large stone basin in front of her. Her fingers brushed against the smooth engravings in the pale stone. A tear on her cheek slid down and fell into the pool as she clambered back into the shallow water. Directly above her, the swan was flying. She rolled off the basin, landing noisily on the wet floor beneath, palms slapping the stone, then again. Even as the cave leached frustration from her, the sting in her hands reminded her that she was afraid and trapped in a nightmare.